The desert looks lifeless, but the nomads knew it breathes. They called the forbidden place the land of breath. They said the sand there rises and falls on its own, as if something alive hides beneath. No one ever returned. 5 explorers, Michael, Sarah, John, David, and Lena, decided to prove the legends wrong. They laughed at the warnings, but deep inside each of them felt uneasy. The sun burned like a merciless eye above. Every step sank into the scorching sand. Endless dunes stretched before them, and the desert silently watched. By evening, they discovered tall obelisks. Massive stone pillars jutted out of the sand like the bones of some ancient giant. Strange symbols were carved into their surface. Sarah whispered they looked like eyes. Michael dismissed her, but his voice trembled. That night, he stepped outside his tent. The sand around the fire was moving slowly, rising and falling, like a living chest. He blinked, and it was gone. Michael said nothing, but sleep never came to him again. At dawn, a sandstorm hit without warning. The wind cut their skin, tore at their clothes, and pushed them back toward the obelisks. Huddled in their shadow, they saw new markings. David frowned. These aren't ancient. They're fresh. The thought made them uneasy. Who or what had carved them? Everyone pretended not to hear his words. But Sarah felt the stone pillars watching them. That night Sarah woke to the sound of footsteps. She peered outside and froze. Figures were walking along the ridge of the dunes. Their movements were heavy, slow, unnatural. She shouted for the others, but the figures vanished. When John checked, he said she imagined it. But Sarah knew what she saw: faceless people, with smooth skin where eyes and mouths should have been. That night Sarah woke to the sound of footsteps. She peered outside and froze. Figures were walking along the ridge of the dunes. Their movements were heavy, slow, unnatural. She shouted for the others, but the figures vanished. When John checked, he said she imagined it. But Sarah knew what she saw: faceless people, with smooth skin where eyes and mouths should have been. That evening John noticed something disturbing. The sand around the obelisks had grown darker, as if soaked in blood. When he touched it, a deep hum echoed, low, hollow, like the earth itself inhaling. They all stepped back. John forced a laugh. It's just wind. But the desert was still. No wind, no sound. Only the weight of silence pressing on their ears. They pushed forward and soon found a cave entrance. On the rock above the entrance, a word was scratched in English: "Leave." David's face turned pale. It's a warning. But exhaustion outweighed fear. They went inside. The cave walls were covered with handprints. But they were too high. Too high for any man standing on the ground. As if left by something crawling on the ceiling. That night Michael vanished. His footprints led out of the cave and into the sand. But the trail ended abruptly, as if he had stepped down into the earth. The sand there moved, rising and falling like breath. Sarah screamed his name, and then she heard it. A muffled voice, faint, desperate. "Help me!" It was Michael. But the voice came from beneath the ground. Panic swept over them. Sarah begged to leave, but John refused. "We're close. This is all in your heads." His eyes burned with strange obsession. Lena trembled but followed. David clenched his fists. And so they walked on, deeper into the desert. In the distance, ruins appeared. Broken columns pierced the sand like the ribs of a buried giant. On crumbling walls loomed massive masks, eyeless, mouthless. When they approached, the ground shivered beneath their feet. Sarah heard whispers. "Closer! they called. Her legs moved on their own. Suddenly, the sand erupted. Dozens of human hands burst from beneath, clawing, grabbing their ankles. Lena screamed, thrashing against the grip. David tried to pull her free. Then, silence. The hands vanished. But Lena lay half-buried, chest heaving. Her last words. "They have no faces." And then the sand swallowed her whole. Only 3 remained. They fled, stumbling through glowing dunes. Yes, glowing. The sand shimmered with a faint light. Beneath it, enormous shapes shifted, swimming like creatures underwater. Sarah collapsed, and darkness swallowed her. She woke to find only John beside her. David was gone. But around them, dozens of palm-shaped prints littered the sand, chaotic, frantic, like someone fought to stay above. Sarah's throat closed with terror. John simply stared, calm, almost smiling. "The sand gives eternity," he whispered. His eyes were blank, like a mask. And then, without hesitation, John stepped forward. The sand quivered, opened, and took him silently. Sarah screamed, but her cry was devoured by the desert. Now she was alone. She ran blindly, until her knees buckled beneath an obelisk. The stone was cold against her back. Then she heard it. A whisper, soft, terrifyingly familiar. It was her own voice, calling her from below. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the whisper grew louder. It wasn't in the air, it was in her head. The sand beneath her pulsed like a lung. With every breath, it pulled her closer. She screamed, but the dunes swallowed the sound, and the world turned black. The expedition was never found. But nomads told stories. On nights of the full moon, shadows walked near the obelisks. Figures without faces, drifting slowly over the dunes. Their footsteps echoed like muffled drums in the endless night. Those who listen closely hear whispers. Sometimes the voices call strangers by name. Sometimes the voice is their own. And if you answer, the sand breathes harder. The elders say the desert is hungry. It craves new souls. Each traveler becomes part of its breath. Their faces erased. Their bodies dissolved into sand. Only shadows remain. So if one day you wander the desert, and you see the obelisks rising in the distance, do not approach. Do not look at the symbols. Do not listen to the voices. Because the desert remembers names. And if it whispers yours, you will become its breath. Every town keeps secrets. But in this place, people whispered about a figure no one had ever seen in daylight. They called him the collector of shadows. He appeared only at night. People went home and never returned. No footprints, no signs, no explanations. Only empty streets and the feeling of eyes watching from the dark. They said that sometimes, a faint light flickered in an old house at the edge of town. That was where he lived, the one who never let go. The old house had stood abandoned for decades. Its windows shattered, roof collapsed, walls crumbling. Yet at night, the windows glowed faintly, as if candles still burned within. Those who dared to approach swore they heard a steady ticking, like a clock counting down. Most people avoided the street entirely. But 5 friends decided to prove the legend false: Alex, Mark, Emma, Jason, and Liz. They thought it was just a scary story. One evening, they walked to the house. The sky was heavy with clouds, the streetlights were dead. Every step echoed too loudly, as if the town itself had gone silent. They pushed the door open and went inside. Dust floated in the air. The floor groaned under their weight, like someone unseen walked above them. Old photographs lined the walls. but the faces were blurred. Emma leaned closer to one photo. It showed a woman, but her eyes were gone. Only shadows filled her face. "It's just damage," Jason muttered nervously. But as they moved deeper inside, all of them felt it. Something was watching. The house itself breathed with silence. At the end of a hallway stood a large mirror. It was dusty, cracked, but it didn't reflect correctly. Instead of 5 figures, it showed 6. A silhouette stood behind them. It didn't move. But when Liz blinked, it was closer. They panicked and rushed to the door. But it no longer opened. It was as if the house itself refused to let them go. Then came the sound of footsteps. Slow, measured, approaching. "Who's there?" Alex shouted. The only answer was breathing, right at his ear. They huddled together, lighting their flashlights. In the beam, a shadow slid across the wall. No one was there. Suddenly Mark's light flickered out. He screamed. When the others turned their beams back, he was gone. All that remained were handprints on the dusty floor, leading deeper inside. 4 remained. Emma sobbed quietly, but they pressed forward. The hallways twisted strangely, as if shifting behind their backs. They entered a room filled with clocks. Dozens of them, all ticking out of sync. Jason whispered, "They're counting us down." And then, all the clocks stopped at once. The silence was suffocating. From the darkness, a whisper grew. At first faint, then louder. Emma screamed. Her flashlight went out. When it flared back, she was gone. Only her scarf lay on the floor. 3 left, Alex, Liz, and Jason. But the whispers followed them. Jason heard his own name spoken from the dark. His body froze, his eyes wide. And then, he was gone. No sound. No trace. Only silence. 2 remained. Alex and Liz stumbled into a room full of mannequins. All of them faceless. As they passed, one mannequin's head turned. Liz screamed. The mannequins began to shift. Their blank faces leaned toward them. Alex dragged Liz away, but terror clung to them. His footsteps echoed endlessly. He held his flashlight tight, hands shaking. The walls were covered with photographs again, but now they showed his friends. Their faces blurred. Only his own photos still had eyes. The others, empty masks. He ran. The front door appeared at last. His hand reached for the handle. But in the cracked mirror beside it, he saw his reflection. And behind him, the silhouette. Closer than ever. Alex screamed. But the sound dissolved, swallowed by the walls. His flashlight went black. In the dark, footsteps approached. Slow. Precise. A whisper breathed. "Now you are mine." The town never saw Alex or his friends again. The old house stood empty once more. Yet neighbors swore. At night, lights flickered in the windows. And the ticking of unseen clocks echoed faintly. Those brave enough to approach claimed to see shadows moving inside. Figures stood still at the windows. And sometimes, one of them waved, as if inviting someone in. The legend of the collector of shadows still lives. They say he's not a man at all, but the dark itself, feeding on curiosity. Every step in his house is a step closer to vanishing. Teenagers sometimes test their courage by going near the house. Most come back, but some don't. And afterward, new photographs appear on the walls inside. Faces blurred. So if you ever see an old house with a light in the window, don't go near. Don't look inside. Don't listen to the whispers. Because the collector of shadows remembers names. And if he speaks yours, you'll become another shadow in his collection.